It's time to end this. Duan Ling Tian glanced at Huang Dinyo, who was still flailing around like a headless fly, and smiled faintly before soaring into the air. Moments later, he was at Huang Dinyo's side. Huang Dinyo, however, remained oblivious, still punching at the air with the force of a collapsing mountain, unleashing waves of power like earth dragons emerging from their caves. Boom! Duan Ling Tian casually struck out with a palm, landing it on Huang Dinyo's back and sending him flying. As Huang Dinyo flew, his face flushed, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of clotted blood. He then looked behind him and shouted, "Who? Who's helping Duan Ling Tian?" Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled, watching Huang Dinyo look in his direction. In the illusion Huang Dinyo was in, there was no one on Duan Ling Tian's side. Seeing Huang Dinyo look left and right, seemingly trying to find out who had ambushed him, Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled, then dispelled his soul skill. Thousand illusions, and the illusionary space vanished at the same time. He appeared directly in front of Huang Dinyo. "How are you here?" Huang Dinyo looked at Duan Ling Tian as if he had seen a ghost. Immediately after, he frantically turned his head to look behind him, only to find no one there. "Impossible. How can you be so fast? Unless you're a void transformation realm expert, your speed can't be this quick." Huang Dinyo kept shaking his head, unable to believe that what he was seeing was real. Dinyo convinced now. At this moment, Shenwei stepped into the training ground, stood beside Duan Ling Tian, and grinned at Huang Dinyo, saying, "I have to say, your strength is indeed impressive. But you should know, Duan Ling Tian once single-handedly killed 8 formidable bandits. Among those 8 bandits, 3 were at the 6th level of the Void Prying Realm." Shenwei recounted Duan Ling Tian's past achievements. "What?" Huang Dinyo's pupils contracted, his face filled with shock. He then looked at Duan Ling Tian, taking a sharp breath. Are you truly a Void Transformation Realm expert? Do you think, if I were a Void Transformation Realm expert, you could withstand even one move from me?" Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled, finding Huang Dinyo too naive to put it bluntly. He was simple-minded. "Dinyo, Duan Ling Tian is like you. Both are Void Prying Realm 5th level martial artists," Shenwei said with a smile. "Impossible." Huang Dinyo resolutely shook his head. "He can't be a Void Prying Realm 5th level martial artist. For a Void Prying Realm 5th level martial artist to defeat me on the ground, they would need to comprehend a mid-level earth concept of the 6th level or above, or another 9th level mid-level concept." Huang Dinyo was very confident in his own strength. Moreover, his speed from there to here was incredibly fast, so fast that I had no time to react. In front of me, only a Void Transformation Realm expert could achieve that, Huang Dinyo stated with absolute certainty. Shenwei was somewhat speechless at Huang Dinyo's stubbornness, but he still stated the facts. "What if I told you that just now, Duan Ling Tian used an illusion to confuse you before injuring you? In other words, the Duan Ling Tian you were constantly attacking was not the real Duan Ling Tian, but one conjured by the illusion. In our eyes, you were just attacking the air." Shenwei finished in one breath. "Illusion?" Huang Dinyo frowned, then looked at Shenwei with a "don't try to fool me" expression. "I didn't sense any fluctuations from inscription patterns or inscription arrays just now. It can't be an illusion. Unless this Duan Ling Tian is a human form taken by a demon, only then could he create an illusion using spiritual power." Huang Dinyo added, "I've already said, Duan Ling Tian's true cultivation is only at the 5th level of the Void Prying Realm. Have you ever heard of abnormalities?" Shenwei shook his head, then directly revealed Duan Ling Tian's identity. "Abnormality." Huang Dinyo frowned, muttering to himself, "I think I heard someone mention it before. Wait, let me think." Huang Dinyo said this while falling into deep thought. "What a big oaf." Yi Xian playfully stuck out her tongue and couldn't help but snort. Duan Ling Tian shook his head, then walked out of the training ground. He then noticed Yang Ling had arrived at some point and immediately greeted him with a smile. "Elder Yang, Duan Ling Tian, with your 5th level Void Prying Realm cultivation, can the illusion created by your innate divine ability actually affect a 6th level Void Prying Realm martial artist?" Yang Ling asked with a stunned expression, clearly having heard Shen Wei's earlier words. Duan Ling Tian smiled and nodded. Although my cultivation is at the 5th level of the void prying realm, because I've consumed spiritual fruits that enhance soul levels, my spiritual power is higher than my cultivation. Huh. Yang Ling laughed heartily. It seems there will be a good show to watch at this 5 Peaks battle. 5 Peaks battle? Hearing Yang Ling's words, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be surprised. What is that? The 5 Peaks battle is a martial arts competition for the younger generation of our 5 Elements sect that is about to be held, but it's different from ordinary competitions. Besides determining individual strength rankings, each peak will also send 3 of their strongest young talents to participate in a team martial arts competition against the other peaks. Finally, based on individual strength rankings and team strength rankings, the specific rankings of the 5 peaks will be relisted. Kuzheng explained with a smile. In his opinion, this 5 peaks battle was an opportunity for the Wood Peak to regain its glory. I've decided to go back with you all and join the fun. Yang Ling said at the same time. His eyes were fixed on Duan Ling Tian, with a hint of expectation flickering within them, hoping that Duan Ling Tian could secure a good ranking for the Wood Peak in this 5 Peaks battle. I remember now. Suddenly, a thunderous voice came. It was Huang Dinyo from the training ground who had come to his senses. He looked at Duan Ling Tian like a monster, exclaiming, "So you're an abnormality. So, the method you used to create an illusion to affect me earlier was your innate divine ability." Innate divine ability? Duan Ling Tian smiled, neither admitting nor denying it. Sometimes, being misunderstood isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, Duan Ling Tian's smile, in Huang Dinyo's eyes, was undoubtedly an admission. How old are you this year? At some point, Huang Dinyo had come to Duan Ling Tian's side, staring intently at him. From your appearance, you look around 25. Your true age should be over 30, right? 28. Duan Ling Tian shrugged and said, "What?" Upon hearing this, Huang Dinyo was instantly shocked. You're actually younger than me? I'm already 31. Monster. You're the real monster. By the end, Huang Dinyo grinned and cursed. Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled. He had long been accustomed to this. However, while Duan Ling Tian was accustomed to it, Yi Xian was not. Hearing Huang Dinyo curse Duan Ling Tian, she immediately became displeased. You're the monster. Your whole family are monsters. At this moment, Yi Xian was completely like a protective leopardess. Seeing this scene, Yang Ling and Kuzheng laughed heartily. Both amused by Yi Xian, Duan Ling Tian and Shen Wei also couldn't help but smile, simultaneously looking at Huang Dinyo, wondering how he would react. Huang Dinyo, however, was speechless, unable to retort in his opinion. Cursing Duan Ling Tian like that seemed like a unique form of praise, didn't it? He knew that whenever someone called him a monster in the past, he was always very happy because it indicated his excellence and uniqueness. When are you all planning to depart? Yang Ling asked Kuzheng. Tomorrow, I suppose, Kuzheng said. The next morning, the group departed from Anding City, heading towards the 5 Elements sect. As soon as the 5 left the city, a middle-aged man emerged from the shadows, then returned to Anding City, heading straight for a sprawling mansion. Entering a back garden, Elder Tang, the middle-aged man, stood outside the pavilion in the back garden, respectfully saluting the old man inside. Have you found their whereabouts? The old man, Earth Peak Elder Tang Lin, who was playing chess against himself, slowly raised his head and asked in a deep voice. No, the middle-aged man shook his head, then added, however, Kuzheng brought people back to the sect today. Those 2 didn't return with Kuzheng, so they're probably in grave danger. Whoosh. Tang Lin suddenly stood up from his seat, a cold light flickering in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, Wood Peak, how audacious, to dare to harm my Earth Peak disciples. Seeing Tang Lin erupt, the middle-aged man felt a surge of speechlessness. You sent someone to infiltrate the Wood Peak as a spy, and you don't allow them to clean house? Of course, he only dared to think this in his mind and did not dare to say it aloud. Among those accompanying Kuzheng, besides Shen Wei, was there also a young man who looked around 25 years old. Tang Lin took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the middle-aged man, and asked, I didn't dare to get too close, so I couldn't clearly see his face. Additionally, there weren't just one person accompanying Kuzheng and Xinwei, but four. The middle-aged man added, "For people." Tang Lin frowned. "Who else?" "One of them is Elder Yang, the head of the Wood Peak outpost in Anding City. As for the other three, they are all unfamiliar faces, and one of them is relatively tall." The middle-aged man recounted everything he had seen. "That old fellow, Yang Ling?" Tang Lin's face darkened. "That old fellow actually left Anding City and returned to the sect with Kuzheng? Does he think that relying solely on that Duan Ling Tian can allow the Wood Peak to turn things around in this Five Peaks battle? Umph. Yang Ling, Kuzheng, I'll let you know that all your hard work in the Wood Peak will ultimately only serve to benefit our Earth Peak." Tang Lin snorted coldly, muttering to himself. By the end, his figure moved, and he vanished into thin air from the pavilion in the back garden. "I'm returning to the sect. You will take charge of matters here in Anding City." At the same time, Tang Lin's voice entered the middle-aged man's ears. "The Five Elements sect is situated on a colossal mountain. The mountain, resembling a giant beast lying in wait, has a flat and spacious summit, and on this flat, spacious summit, five interconnected, precipitous peaks rise from a distance. The five peaks look like a human hand, with varying heights, soaring into the sky. Five Finger Mountain." Upon seeing the five towering peaks, this thought was the first to cross Duan Ling Tian's mind. "These five treacherous peaks are the home of our Five Elements sect. The tallest peak in the middle is our Five Elements sect's Gold Peak. Xinwei introduced them to Duan Ling Tian. "Huang Danyo and Yi Xian. That's Water Peak. That's Fire Peak. And the shortest is Earth Peak. Our Wood Peak is that one." After introducing the third, fourth, and shortest treacherous peaks, Xinwei pointed to the second tallest peak and said to Duan Ling Tian and the other two. Duan Ling Tian and the other two's gazes then fell upon Wood Peak. Wood Peak soared into the clouds, its full extent obscured from view. Seeing Xinwei introduce Wood Peak to Duan Ling Tian and the others, Kuzheng and Yang Ling moved, soaring towards Wood Peak first. A moment later, they became two small black dots in the eyes of Duan Ling Tian and the other three. "Let's go too," Xinwei called out to Duan Ling Tian and the other two, then took the lead in chasing after Kuzheng and Yang Ling. Duan Ling Tian and the other two followed closely. Of course, Yi Xian was carried by Duan Ling Tian as they chased, not to mention that Yi Xian had not yet entered the void prying stage and couldn't fly through the air. Even if Yi Xian had entered the void prying stage and knew how to fly, Duan Ling Tian wouldn't have let her fly by herself. The flying speed of void prying stage martial artists, compared to these individuals who were at least at the void interpretation stage 4th level, was not much different from an ant walking. Under Xinwei's lead, Duan Ling Tian and the other two landed on a spacious platform halfway up Wood Peak. "Xinwei, you arrange their living quarters first. Your martial uncle and I will go see the Peak Master, and we'll register them as official disciples tomorrow." After Kuzheng said this to Xinwei, he and Yang Ling left together. "Follow me," Xinwei said to Duan Ling Tian and the other two, then led them to a nearby mountainside. Hovering above a continuous cluster of buildings, the buildings that formed the continuous cluster were mostly pavilions, with a few resembling palaces. The pavilions over there are all empty and are regularly cleaned. You can stay there for now. If it's not comfortable, we can change it for you later. Xinwei led Duan Ling Tian and the other two through the air, heading towards a row of pavilions in front. And in a blink, they were above one of them. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian noticed many young men and women flying out of some pavilions nearby, curiously observing him, Yi Xian, and Huang Danyo. The appearance of three new faces on Wood Peak clearly surprised these Wood Peak disciples, just as Xinwei was leading Duan Ling Tian and the other three in a dive, preparing to enter the pavilion. Whoosh, whoosh. Two piercing wind-whistling sounds came at the same time, growing closer. A moment later, two figures appeared in the path of Duan Ling Tian and the other three, blocking them. These were two young men, both around 35 years old, one in blue and one in green. They were about the same age as Xinwei, but judging by the mocking smiles on their faces, they clearly meant trouble. Luo Chun, what do you mean? Shen Wei's face darkened as he looked at the blue-clad youth and asked in a low voice. Clearly, Shen Wei recognized this blue-clad youth. Moreover, from Shen Wei's extremely displeased expression and the cold glint in his eyes, it was evident that he and this blue-clad youth had a significant conflict. Immediately, Duan Lingtian also realized that this blue-clad youth was targeting Shen Wei. Shen Wei, what's with your attitude? I merely wanted to see what kind of people the Wood Peak disciples you and Elder Ku brought back from your trip are. Luo Chun, dressed in blue, smiled faintly, then narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing Duan Lingtian, Yi Xian, and Huang Denyo from head to toe. Ha! Suddenly, Luo Chun burst into unprovoked laughter, laughing for a long time, until tears almost streamed from his eyes. What are you laughing at? Cold light flickered in Shen Wei's eyes. Duan Lingtian and the other two couldn't help but frown if it weren't for the fact that this was Wood Peak and they were newcomers. Duan Lingtian would have already slapped Luo Chun twice without hesitation. Laughing at what? Hearing Shen Wei's words, Luo Chun's laughter finally ceased, and his gaze fell upon Duan Lingtian and Yi Xian. Shen Wei, don't tell me. These two are also Wood Peak disciples you and Elder Ku brought back from outside this time. What if they are? Shen Wei responded coldly, the cold glint in his eyes intensifying. I remember. The elders of our Wood Peak were ordered to go out to recruit void interpretation stage martial artists under 40 years old, right? You and Elder Ku bringing back two freeloading good-for-nothings seems to go against the Peak Master's orders, doesn't it? A sneer appeared on Luo Chun's lips as he mocked them. Luo Chun, watch your mouth. Hearing the other party called Duan Lingtian and Yi Xian good-for-nothings, Shen Wei's face changed drastically, and he shouted sternly. Duan Lingtian and Yi Xian's faces also darkened. That it seemed like this was their first time meeting Luo Chun, right? On their first meeting, Luo Chun called them good-for-nothings? A hint of coldness appeared in Duan Lingtian's eyes as he stared at Luo Chun, his elemental energy surging within him. If this Wood Peak disciple dared to say it again, he would strike without hesitation. At this moment, he was filled with animosity towards this Wood Peak disciple he had never met before, facing Shen Wei's stern shout. Luo Chun seemed not to hear it, continuing to mock. Or perhaps, you and Elder Ku truly couldn't find any void interpretation stage young powerhouses under 40. So you brought these three to make up the numbers. At this point, not only did Luo Chun start laughing again, but even the green-clad youth beside him couldn't help but laugh. Luo Chun, you will regret this. Shen Wei's face grew even darker, the chill in his eyes about to burst forth, as he said in a deep voice. Duan Lingtian and Huang Denyo's faces were also extremely grim, calling them making up the numbers? Regret. Luo Chun was first stunned when he heard Shen Wei's words. Then he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Shen Wei, don't forget, your strength and mine are just about equal. You won't gain any advantage from me. Or perhaps you want to rely on them? Forget these two. They might have some talent, but right now, they are useless to our Wood Peak. Luo Chun's disdainful gaze swept over Duan Lingtian and Yi Xian, finally settling on Huang Denyo. This big guy looks pretty good, but how strong can a person in his early 30s be? At most, he's just a void interpretation stage first-level martial artist. Luo Chun's gaze towards Huang Denyo was still full of disdain. Huang Denyo's face changed, and he couldn't hold back, his elemental energy surging within him, wanting to attack Luo Chun. However, when a voice transmission of elemental energy reached his ears, he suppressed his inner impulse, and at the same time, a cold, mocking smile appeared on his lips. Luo Chun. Shen Wei took a deep breath, a coldness appearing at the corner of his mouth. You keep slandering the Wood Peak disciples my master and I brought back, but how strong are the Wood Peak disciples you and your master found? The Wood Peak disciples my master and I found are naturally stronger than the ones you and your master found. This person beside me, do you see him? His name is Hong Shi, 36 years old, and his strength is no less than ours. Luo Chun said, looking at the green-clad youth beside him, his face full of pride. At this moment, the green-clad youth, Hong Shi, swept his gaze over Duan Lingtian and Huang Denyo, sneering. Two good-for-nothings, even if they team up. I can take them down with one move each. As for Yi Xian, he completely ignored her. Luo Chun, as expected of a wood-peaked disciple, you accompanied your master to find. This Hongshi's mouth stinks, just like yours. Shen Wei's cold, knife-like gaze swept over Hongxi, finally landing on Luo Chun. You, Luo Chun, insulted by Shen Wei, his face changed, and he was so angry that his elemental energy surged, ready to burst forth. Luo Chun, this Hongxi you and your master found. He hasn't officially registered as a disciple of our Wood Peak yet, has he? Shen Wei's expression suddenly became serious, and he asked earnestly. No. Seeing the change in Shen Wei's expression, Luo Chun was momentarily stunned and answered somewhat instinctively. However, after answering Shen Wei, he regained his composure, a mocking smile appearing on his face. Shen Wei, why are you asking this? You'll find out soon enough. This time, Shen Wei didn't even look at Luo Chun, just gave Hongxi a deep look. Immediately after, he looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo. Duan Ling Tian Dinyo? Each peak of our 5 elements sect has a rule. Anyone who has not yet officially registered as a disciple of a peak is not considered a member of the sect. And even if they are killed, the sect will not investigate. Shen Wei's words made Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo's eyes light up. Hearing Shen Wei's words, Luo Chen sneered. Shen Wei, you don't actually think these two good-for-nothings can kill Hongxi, do you? What a huge joke. Good-for-nothings? The smiles that had appeared on Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo's faces completely froze after hearing Luo Chen's words. Their eyes, filled with coldness, immediately locked onto Luo Chun, ready to devour him. Between sect disciples, as long as they don't cripple or kill the other party, the sect will not pursue responsibility. At this moment, Shen Wei added another sentence. Immediately, the frozen smiles on Duan Ling Tian and Dinyo's faces bloomed again. Extremely brilliant. Dinyo, which one do you want? Duan Ling Tian asked. Me? I want both. Huang Dinyo was first stunned. Then, after reacting, he said decisively, Dinyo, you're too greedy, aren't you? In that case, let's see who's faster. As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, he had already flown out. You're shameless. Seeing Duan Ling Tian fly out the moment he finished speaking, not giving him any time to prepare, Huang Dinyo cursed, then hastily followed. Boom. Boom. The solid, earthy yellow power under Huang Dinyo's feet streaked across the sky, and he used it to propel himself forward, moving so fast that he surpassed Duan Ling Tian. Although this wasn't the ground, he couldn't use the power of the earth, but he was, after all, a 5th-level void amelioration martial artist who had comprehended 5th-level intermediate earth insight. Even without the power of the earth, he could still unleash the strength of 130 ancient horned dragons. As for Duan Ling Tian, although he was also a 5th-level void amelioration martial artist, he had only comprehended 3rd-level intermediate wind insight. Even with other low-level insights, he was still short of Huang Dinyo by the strength of more than 10 ancient horned dragons. Therefore, even though Duan Ling Tian attacked first, he was still caught up by Huang Dinyo. Their first target was, by unspoken agreement, the same person, Luo Chun. You guys. Luo Chun, who had been stunned by Shen Wei's words, suddenly saw 2 figures pouncing towards him. He immediately shivered and snapped back to reality. He saw, above the heads of these 2, phantom images of ancient horned dragons that filled him with dread. 110 phantom images of ancient horned dragons. 130 phantom images of ancient horned dragons. Accompanying the purple-clad youth and the tall, robust youth, they charged straight at him. Luo Chun was dumbfounded, completely dumbfounded. How could these 2 be so strong? Slap, slap. 2 crisp slaps rang out almost simultaneously. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo had arrived in front of Luo Chun in a flash, each giving him a slap. One on the left and one on the right. In an instant, Luo Chen's face, which had been rather handsome, swelled up, turning into a big pig's head. You. Luo Chun, his face swollen like a pig's head, had a sinister glint in his eyes and was about to utter some harsh words. However, before he could finish, Huang Dinyo's fist landed squarely on his abdomen, sending him flying and letting out a pig-like shriek of agony. Luo Chen barely managed to stop himself, now completely sobered up by the beating. Looking at the 130 phantom images of ancient horned dragons above Huang Dinyo's head, he felt a chill run down his spine. This big guy is actually so strong. Without spirit weapons, when he attacked, he drew upon the power of heaven and earth, forming 130 phantom images of ancient horned dragons. If it were a 4th level void amelioration martial artist, only someone who had comprehended 6th level intermediate insight could do it. A 5th level void amelioration martial artist who had comprehended 5th level intermediate insight could also do it. A 6th level void amelioration martial artist only needed to comprehend 4th level intermediate insight to do it. However, no matter which one it was not someone he could provoke, and that purple-clad youth. Luo Chen's gaze fell on the heaven and earth phenomenon above Duan Ling Tian's head. There, 110 phantom images of ancient horned dragons coiled down, lifelike and with a powerful aura, drawing upon the power of heaven and earth to form 110 phantom images of ancient horned dragons. Even his strength is greater than mine. Staring at the purple-clad youth whom he had previously underestimated, Luo Chen's face was as ugly as it could be. So strong. At this moment, the surrounding disciples of the Wood Peak exclaimed in surprise. For a time, they were also shocked by the strength of these two new faces. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo. Are these two the disciples of the Wood Peak that Shun Wei and Elder Ku went out and found this time? They're too strong, aren't they? Especially that big guy. He looks to be just over 30. But when he attacked, it was earth-shattering, drawing upon the power of heaven and earth to form 130 phantom images of ancient horned dragons. That purple-clad youth is not weak either. He looks to be around 25, and his strength already surpasses Shun Wei and Luo Chen. The group of Wood Peak disciples looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo with unconcealed excitement. As long as that big guy isn't poached by the other 3 peaks, our Wood Peak might not come in last in this 5 peaks battle. That's right. The big guy's own strength is formidable, and coupled with his comprehension of earth insight, once he attacks on the ground, he can draw upon extremely terrifying power from the earth. The big guy's strength on the ground is enough to overpower all the young disciples of the Water Peak, Fire Peak, and Earth Peak. Most of the Wood Peak disciples' gazes were fixed on Huang De in IU.AT this moment. While they were excited, their eyes also held a hint of apprehension, fearing that Huang Dinyo would be poached by the other 3 peaks. After all, similar incidents had happened many times before, leaving them feeling quite helpless. Dinyo, they're all really afraid you'll be poached by the other 3 peaks. Noticing the gazes of the surrounding Wood Peak disciples, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but laugh and said to Huang Dinyo, "Umph." Huang Dinyo snorted, his voice like thunder. "You guys underestimate me, Huang Dinyo. How could I, Huang Dinyo, be such a fickle person?" As Huang Dinyo said this, the surrounding Wood Peak disciples all showed friendly expressions, feeling that their Wood Peak would from now on have another young powerhouse like a pillar of heaven. However, Huang Dinyo's next sentence completely stunned them. "Of course, if anyone is willing to give me 10 or 8 second-grade spirit weapons, and then give me 10 or 20 insight fragments of 7th level or higher, I think I would still be willing to leave Wood Peak and join their peak." Huang Dinyo changed his tone and chuckled. For a moment, the group of Wood Peak disciples reacted, and one by one, they let out good-natured laughter. 10 or 8 second-grade spirit weapons. Among the 5 element sex peaks, even if you added up all the second-grade spirit weapons held by the Peak Master and all the elders, there probably wouldn't be that many, right? Asterisk and 10 or 20 insight fragments of 7th level or higher was even more outrageous. Perhaps Huang Dinyo was indeed strong, even considered a prodigy among all the young disciples of the 5-element sect. But he still wasn't worth such a huge price from the other 3 peaks. Shun Wei, I really didn't expect you and Elder Ku to find 2 monsters like these. Hongxi, let's go. Realizing that he wouldn't gain any advantage today, Luo Chen glared at Shun Wei resentfully, rubbed his swollen cheeks for a moment, then called out to the green-clad youth, preparing to leave as soon as he had witnessed the strength displayed by Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo. Hongxi's face had changed, becoming extremely ugly. Although his strength was decent, it was only comparable to Luo Chen's. Without spirit weapons, if he went all out, he could unleash at most the strength of 100 ancient horned dragons, which was not only inferior to the big guy, but also slightly less than the purple-clad youth. Now, hearing Luo Chen's call, Hongshi's eyes suddenly lit up, and he flew towards Luo Chen with a sigh of relief. He didn't want to stay in this place for a moment longer. However, could he just leave now if he wanted to? Whoosh, whoosh. A blue lightning bolt, accompanied by an earthy yellow lightning bolt, streaked across the sky, appearing in Hongshi's path in a flash and blocking him. That a purple-clad youth enveloped in a swirling blue gale, and a tall youth enveloped in an earthy yellow light shield, firmly blocked Hongshi's path. What are you doing? Luo Chen's face changed dramatically. Seeing the two people who appeared before him, Hongshi's expression also changed. Then he took a deep breath, forcing a smile onto his face. Sirs, you motherfucker. Before Hongshi could finish speaking, Huang Denyo roared, interrupting Hongshi's words, and simultaneously struck out like lightning. Boom. Huang Denyo threw a punch, his fist like a collapsing mountain, and a vast, earthy yellow power surged out, as if transforming into an earthy yellow divine dragon, smashing fiercely into Hongshi's chest. Bang. The immense force struck Hongshi's chest, sending him flying like an arrow shot from a bowstring. Wah! The moment Hongshi flew out, his face flushed, and he opened his mouth to spew out a large mouthful of clotted blood, mixed with blood clots. Clearly fragments of internal organs shattered by Huang Denyo's punch. Bang! Bang! Seeing Hongshi flying backward, Huang Denyo clearly had no intention of letting him go just like that. He stomped his legs in the air, shattering a large earthy yellow rock that had appeared out of nowhere beneath his feet, and propelled himself forward. Whoosh. Huang Denyo's speed was like a swift bolt of lightning, and he caught up to Hongshi in an instant. Boom. Another punch struck, landing squarely on Hongshi's dantian, completely destroying it and causing the elemental energy within to gush out uncontrollably. Hongshi let out a pig-like shriek of agony. His elemental energy instantly extinguished, and his body, deprived of its support, plummeted downwards. Without his elemental energy, even if Hongshi could sense the insight in the world, without elemental energy as a medium, it was not enough to merge into his body and lift him up. Luo? Luo Chen, save me. Hongshi's descent accelerated, and he struggled to open his mouth to call for help from Luo Chen. If Luo Chen didn't save him, he would surely be smashed to death. The moment Huang Denyo destroyed Hongshi's dantian, Luo Chen's gaze towards Hongshi completely changed. Now, hearing Hongshi's plea for help, he snorted coldly. Humph. Useless trash. Then he flew away without looking back, leaving Hongshi to continue his descent, crashing against the cliff with a loud thud, reduced to a pile of flesh and blood. This Hongshi. How pathetic. Withdrawing his gaze from Hongshi, Duan Ling Tian glanced at Luo Chen's retreating figure and shook his head. That Luo Chen is really a piece of trash. Brother Nyo, I was merciful, only crippling his companion's dantian, not intending to kill him. But he actually abandoned his companion and just ran away. Huang Denyo smacked his lips and cursed with a grin. Merciful? Hearing Huang Denyo's words, the surrounding Wood-Peak disciples were speechless. You crippled his dantian, and you call that merciful? If you hadn't crippled his dantian, would he have fallen to his death? Let's go. Shen Wei seemed accustomed to Huang Denyo's violence. After greeting Duan Ling Tian and the other two, he continued to dive towards the pavilions below. Humph. Luo Chen got off easy. Yi Xian, carried by Duan Ling Tian, clenched her small fists and said resentfully. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but shiver. If this girl grew up, she would probably be a little devil type of character. Thinking of a little devil, Duan Ling Tian's gaze became hazy, and in his mind, the figure of a girl in yellow appeared. The girl in yellow was Han Xuanai. At this moment, I wonder what Xuanai is doing. And also little gold, little black, and little white. I wonder if they've come out of that place yet. Duan Ling Tian sighed to himself, and when he came back to his senses, he had already followed Shen Wei to a 3-story pavilion. Each floor of this 3-story pavilion has a master bedroom. You can arrange yourselves as you wish. Shinwei said to Duanling Tian and the other two. If you need anything, you can come find me. I live in that pavilion over there. As he spoke, Shinwei pointed to a two-story pavilion in the distance. Understood. Duanling Tian and the other two nodded and then moved into the pavilion. Huang Denyo took the lowest floor. Yi Xian moved to the second floor, and Duanling Tian settled into the top floor, from the master bedroom on the top floor. Stepping out the door revealed an endless blue sky and white clouds that as Duanling Tian and the other two entered the pavilion. The Mu Feng disciples who had gathered to watch the commotion gradually dispersed, their faces filled with an indescribable excitement. I never expected that Senior Brother Shin and Elder Ku would bring back two such outstanding young powerhouses this time. Our Mu Feng can finally hold its head high. The Five Peaks battle is just the beginning. There are only 3 days left until the Five Peaks battle. It's truly exciting. Smiles appeared on the faces of the Mu Feng disciples. They were Mu Feng disciples, sharing the honor and disgrace of Mu Feng. Mu Feng being at the bottom among the 5 peaks of the 5 elements sect had caused them to endure countless snubs and feel inferior in front of disciples from the other 4 peaks. They had long grown tired of such days. This time, seeing an opportunity to turn things around, they were naturally extremely excited. Before long, more than half of Mu Feng knew what had just happened. Immediately, the Mu Feng disciples who knew about this matter became excited and stirred up. While most of the Mu Feng disciples were in a frenzy, a few exceptions existed. Luo Chun was one of them. After Luo Chun took the healing elixir, his swollen face, which had resembled a pig's head, returned to normal, showing no traces of injury. However, his complexion was extremely grim now, and he stood in the air, feeling somewhat uneasy. Near the peak of Mu Feng, a 3-story pavilion stood, isolated on the side of a cliff, appearing extremely perilous and causing people to feel a sense of dread. Gazing at the pavilion before him, Luo Chen's face was filled with internal conflict. But finally, he gritted his teeth, flew out, and landed on the pavilion. You're back? Just then, an old man in red walked out of a room on the 3rd floor of the pavilion. The old man was burly, with a full beard, appearing rough and unrefined. Master. Facing the old man, Luo Chun was respectful, but his face was somewhat grim, and he moved his lips, yet ultimately failed to speak, as if there was something he found difficult to say. What's wrong? The bearded old man noticed Luo Chen's unusual demeanor and asked with a puzzled expression, Master. Luo Chen took a deep breath. He knew very well that even if he didn't speak about Hongshi's matter now, his master would find out soon enough. Therefore, he chose to be frank. Hongshi he. Luo Chen looked at the bearded old man, his master, with some trepidation, slowly uttering 3 words before hesitating again, as if he couldn't continue. Some time ago, his master had put in a lot of effort to bring Hongshi into the 5 elements sect and into Mu Feng. Besides the wasted time, he had also spent quite a few 3rd-grade spirit weapons and concept fragments on the force Hong she belonged to, and now, Hong Shi was dead, killed in Mu Feng. What happened to Hong Shi? The bearded old man's face changed. Master, Hong Shi, he was killed. Taking a deep breath, Luo Chen finally mustered the courage to speak. What? The bearded old man's pupils constricted, a cold light flashing within them, and he asked sternly, was it done by someone from Shui Feng, or Tu Feng? None of them. Luo Chen shook his head. None of them. The bearded old man frowned. Then how did he die? Could it be someone from Jin Feng? Mentioning Jin Feng, a hint of apprehension appeared in the old man's eyes. No, Luo Chen shook his head again, smiling bitterly. It was someone from our Mu Feng. Someone from our Mu Feng? The bearded old man was startled, then frowned and asked, did he offend an elder, or perhaps a disciple of the middle generation? In his opinion, with Hongshi's strength, looking across Mu Feng, almost no one could kill him except for the Mu Feng elders and those middle-aged disciples. Hongshi's strength was comparable to that of Shun Wei and Luo Chun, the most outstanding among the current generation of young disciples in Mu Feng. Even if either Shin Wei or Luo Chun had attacked, it would have been impossible to kill him. No. Luo Chen shook his head once more. No. The bearded old man's mouth twitched slightly upon hearing this, and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. Could it be done by young disciples brought back by other elders from outside? Yes. Luo Chun nodded, two sharp glints flashing in his eyes. It was the young disciples brought back by Shun Wei and Elder Ke from outside. They killed Hong Shi as soon as they arrived at Mu Feng. A glint flashed in the bearded old man's eyes, and he fell silent for a moment. This moment. Luo Chun looked at the bearded man, urging anxiously, "Master, the reason they dared to kill Hong Shi is simply because Hong Shi is not yet officially registered as a disciple of our Five Elements sect, believing the sect will not interfere. Now, those two guys haven't registered yet either, so even if they die, the sect won't pursue it. Master, you must avenge Hong Shi and kill those two guys." By the end, Luo Chen's eyes were filled with chilling intent, as if he wanted to devour someone. Today, he had originally only intended to provoke Shun Wei and suppress him. But who would have thought that not only did he fail to suppress Shun Wei, but even his companion was killed by someone next to Shun Wei. The moment Hong Shi was killed, he could sense the mocking gazes of a group of Mu Feng disciples around him that in his entire life. This was the first time he had suffered such a great humiliation. Now, he only wanted those two guys who had humiliated him to die. If they didn't die, he wouldn't find peace. 2. The bearded old man, who had been silent, heard Luo Chen's words and couldn't help but frown. "Do you mean they both teamed up to kill Hong Shi?" "Yes." Luo Chen nodded. He knew in his heart that if Huang Denyo had killed Hong Shi by himself, his master, for the sake of Mu Feng's future, might not do anything to Huang Denyo. But now, saying that the other party killed Hong Shi by teaming up was completely different. Before the bearded old man could respond, Luo Chen snorted. If they hadn't teamed up, how could they have been Hong Shi's match? Also, this matter should also be blamed on Shun Wei. He blocked me and wouldn't let me save Hong Shi. It was precisely because of this that Hong Shi was killed by those two guys. By the end, Luo Chen's face was filled with indignation. As if everything he said was true, at least, the bearded old man believed it. Humph. After hearing Luo Chen's words, the old man snorted coldly. If they had killed Hong Shi in a one-on-one situation, then so be it. With them in Mu Feng, even without Hong Shi, it wouldn't have much impact. But they actually dared to team up and destroy a prospective Mu Feng disciple, who was even more outstanding than them. Two people who are inferior to Hong Shi are useless to our Mu Feng. By the end, the old man's face was covered with a layer of frost, since they dared to kill Hong Shi because he was a prospective Mu Feng disciple. Then I, too, can kill them. Just two insignificant prospective Mu Feng disciples. The bearded old man's words were filled with cold severity. That a prospective Mu Feng disciple refers to someone whom Mu Feng is willing to accept, and who is also willing to join Mu Feng, but is not yet officially registered as a disciple of the Five Elements sect. Such individuals are not protected by the Five Elements sect. Master, if you want to kill them, we should go there now and get rid of them both before Shun Wei takes them to register as official disciples. Luo Chen, who clearly felt his master's anger, had a hint of triumph in his eyes and couldn't help but urge him verbally. "Lead the way." The bearded old man nodded, clearly also finding Luo Chen's words reasonable. "Yes." Luo Chen flew out excitedly, leading the way and swooping down as for the bearded old man. He followed Luo Chen unhurriedly from beginning to end, descending with Luo Chen onto a pavilion on the mountainside of Mu Feng. "It's Luo Chen and his master, Elder He." Immediately, many people in nearby pavilions poked their heads out, recognizing Luo Chen and the bearded old man. What are they here for? They wouldn't be here to settle scores with those two young disciples brought back by Shun Wei and Elder Ke, would they? Probably not. Luo Chen might do something like that, but Elder He definitely wouldn't. Elder He, who is wholeheartedly for Mu Feng, certainly wouldn't do anything that harms Mu Feng's interests. Because of the bearded old man's appearance, the Mu Feng disciples in the various pavilions did not dare to approach to watch the commotion, fearing that they might accidentally provoke this Elder He. Elder He's temper was notoriously fiery in Mu Feng, and few dared to provoke him directly. "Are they inside?" The bearded old man, who was elder He Gang of the Mu Feng of the Five Elements sect, looked at the three-story pavilion beneath his feet, a cold glint flashing in his eyes, and asked in a deep voice, "Yes, Master." Luo Chen respectfully responded, then channeled his elemental energy to project his voice directly towards the three-story pavilion below. The gathered sound, though it spread throughout the entire three-story pavilion, was not heard by the other Mu Feng disciples who were observing from some distant pavilions. Duan Lingtian, Huangdanyo, come out and face your death. These were Luo Chen's exact words. Duan Lingtian, Huangdanyo, and Yi Xian in the pavilion all heard Luo Chen's words at once, their faces sinking. At that moment, Yi Xian stepped out of her room, gazing up at Luo Chen in the sky, her eyes flashing with anger. Duan Lingtian and Huangdanyo soared into the air, instantly reaching the sky and standing in distant opposition to Luo Chen. Before Duan Lingtian and Huangdanyo could speak, they saw a red-robed, burly old man descend from the sky, landing beside Luo Chen and staring at them with chilling eyes. A void transformation stage expert? Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, and a look of shock appeared on his face. Huangdanyo's face also showed a hint of apprehension, and he whispered to Duan Lingtian, "Duan Lingtian, it seems Luo Chen has called his master." Luo Chen's master was He Gang, an elder of Wood Peak. Duan Lingtian had learned this information from the whispers of some Wood Peak disciples when Xinwei and Luo Chen were clashing earlier. However, he never expected Luo Chen to actually summon his master. "Master, these two are the ones who killed Hong Shi." Luo Chen looked at Duan Lingtian and Huangdanyo, speaking in a low voice to He Gang beside him. His eyes were filled with strands of menacing cold light, as if ready to devour someone. "You two killed Hong Shi?" He Gang stared coldly at Duan Lingtian and Huangdanyo, his face showing indignant fury at the same time. His red robe billowed without wind, swelling up. Before Duan Lingtian and Huangdanyo could speak, Luo Chen pointed into the distance. "Master, look, that's Hong Shi's body. They crippled Hong Shi's cultivation, and then let him fall to his death." The direction Luo Chen pointed was the cliff where Hong Shi had fallen. There was a shocking pool of blood, and a body that had been smashed into a pulp. He Gang's pupils involuntarily contracted as he looked at some unknown moment. A vast and solid milky white elemental energy surged from his body, flowing around him like liquid. Within this liquid-like, solid, and vast elemental energy, there were also faint traces of violent aura, as if ready to erupt at any moment. "Death is but a nod of the head. But you two used such cruel methods to kill Hong Shi. You are not worthy of being disciples of my Wood Peak." He Gang was furious, his cold eyes fixed on Duan Lingtian and Huangdanyo, his voice utterly chilling. "Not only that, but you two must also pay the price for Hong Shi's death. Not worthy of being Wood Peak disciples. Pay the price for Hong Shi's death?" Hearing He Gang's words, Duan Lingtian and Huangdanyo couldn't help but look at each other, their eyes meeting, and both could see extreme anger in the other's gaze. At some point, a cold smile appeared on both their lips simultaneously. "You are He Gang, the elder of Wood Peak?" Duan Lingtian took a step forward, meeting He Gang's gaze without fear, and asked coldly, "Presumptuous." Before He Gang could speak, Luo Chen shouted, "Duan Lingtian, how can a quasi-Wood Peak disciple like you dare to address my master by name? Even if you were a formal Wood Peak disciple, you wouldn't be qualified to address my master by name, let alone as a quasi-Wood Peak disciple." However, Duan Lingtian ignored Luo Chen and looked at He Gang, asking coldly, "Elder He, you keep saying we must pay the price for Hong Shi's death. Do you perhaps think we killed Hong Shi for no reason? Or perhaps you think Hong Shi was blameless?" Being questioned directly by Duan Lingtian, He Gang's face became extremely grim. Who was he? A dignified elder of the Five Elements sect's Wood Peak, a void transformation stage 6th level existence. Before him, a mere quasi-Wood Peak disciple dared to be so presumptuous? However, when Duan Lingtian spoke further, his brows involuntarily furrowed, and he realized that he had overlooked the most important thing. How did Hong Shi provoke these two? Then I'd like to hear you tell me. What fault did Hong Shi have? He Gang asked coldly. That? I'm afraid you'll have to ask your good disciple, Elder He. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed with coldness, and then he looked at Luo Chun, saying each word distinctly. He Gang heard this and immediately looked at Luo Chun. Luo Chun, you speak. Yes, master. Luo Chun respectfully replied, then said, regarding today's matter, I admit I was at fault first. When I saw Shun Wei bring them to Wood Peak, I was overcome with a competitive spirit and stopped them. As Luo Chun spoke, he pointed at Duan Ling Tian and Huangdan Yo. He Gang nodded. A relieved smile on his face, he naturally understood his disciple. His disciple was accustomed to being competitive, so it wasn't strange for him to do such a thing. But since he could recognize his mistake, it was a good start and excusable. Duan Ling Tian and Huangdan Yo watched as He Gang not only didn't blame Luo Chun after he explained the cause of the conflict, but instead smiled. And their faces immediately turned somewhat grim. Duan Ling Tian. It seems this old man is a brainless protector of his own. Huangdan Yo's furious elemental energy voice transmission reached Duan Ling Tian's ear, clear and distinct. I can see that. Duan Ling Tian nodded. His eyes slightly narrowed, and he said via elemental energy transmission, indeed, like master, like disciple. Perhaps we were wrong from the start. The reason Wood Peak is declining isn't entirely due to the targeting from the other 3 peaks. This old man actually dares to say that Brother Nyo is not worthy of being a Wood Peak disciple. Does he really think Brother Nyo cares about becoming their Wood Peak disciple? With Brother Nyo's talent, even the 5 Elements sect's Gold Peak wouldn't turn me away. Huangdan Yo's elemental energy transmission was full of disdain. Later, Hong Shi and I merely used inappropriate words and slightly offended them. But they, without a word, suddenly attacked and crippled Hong Shi's cultivation, letting him fall to his death. Luo Chun continued. Towards the end, he looked at He Gang, his face showing extreme anger, and he said indignantly, Master, you must avenge Hong Shi. Even if Hong Shi was at fault first, he didn't deserve to die. He Gang nodded, his eyes filled with icy killing intent as he looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huangdan Yo. Do you two still have anything to say now? Huangdan Yo snorted, saying with disdain, now, is anything I say still useful? No wonder Luo Chun is so arrogant, daring to cause trouble for no reason. It turns out he has a good master, like you backing him up. With a parasite like you around, it's no wonder Wood Peak is declining. Towards the end, Huangdan Yo was utterly impolite, courting death. Hearing Huangdan Yo's words, He Gang's face changed drastically. Immediately after, the almost liquefied elemental energy around him surged, then transformed into thick purple lightning bolts, with faint rumbling thunder sounds echoing within them. Whoosh! Above He Gang's head in the sky, thousands of ancient horned dragon phantoms gathered majestically, like dark clouds pressing down on a city, bringing an immense sense of oppression. Void Transformation Stage 6th Level. 6th Level High-Grade Lightning Concept. Duan Ling Tian's face darkened slightly. Although he already knew this He Gang was a Wood Peak Elder, he hadn't expected He Gang's strength to be so formidable that a Void Transformation Stage 6th Level Elder must hold a significant position within Wood Peak. At once, a chill rose in Duan Ling Tian's heart that he suddenly felt that what Huangdan Yo had just said was so correct. Perhaps Wood Peak's decline was indeed not just because of the lack of successors among the younger generation, but also because of the Wood Peak Elders' inability to distinguish right from wrong, black from white. As the saying goes, a pitiful person must have something hateful about them, and Wood Peak was no exception. Oh no. Heavens! Elder He is actually going to attack them. They are the future of our Wood Peak. No, absolutely cannot let anything happen to them. If something happens to them, we will still be unable to hold our heads high in front of the other 4 peaks, just like before. Fellow disciples who don't want to suffer humiliation anymore, follow me. No matter what, we cannot let Elder He harm the future hope of our Wood Peak. Let's go. I'll go inform Senior Brother Shun Wei. Just as He Gang raised his hand, preparing to attack Duan Ling Tian and Huangdan Yo. And Duan Ling Tian also pulled out a talisman, his gaze locked on a He Gang, ready to throw the talisman to suppress and kill He Gang at any moment. Stop. Elder He, you cannot kill them. You cannot destroy the future of our Wood Peak. Elder He, if they are killed by you, you will become the eternal sinner of our Wood Peak. He Gang, today I don't care if you are a Wood Peak elder or not. If you want to touch them, you must first step over my dead body. A series of booming voices, like thunder, swept in from all directions, causing He Gang's expression to change involuntarily. As for Luo Chun, seeing a large group of Wood Peak disciples rushing towards them, he was completely stunned. He never expected such an exaggerated thing to happen. These Wood Peak disciples were here to help Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, these two outsiders. At this moment, his heart was filled with disbelief and also endless jealousy. Immediately after, he hurriedly looked at He Gang, urging, "Master, quickly kill them. Quickly kill them." At this very moment, only one thought remained in his mind. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo must die. Duan Ling Tian, who had also been startled by the Wood Peak disciples gathering from all directions, heard Luo Chen's words. His face changed, and he hurriedly shifted his attention to He Gang, locking his gaze on him. As long as He Gang made the slightest move, he would not hesitate to throw the talisman in his hand and suppress and kill He Gang. However, He Gang seemed not to have heard Luo Chen's words. His hand slowly lowered, and the purple lightning bolts entwined around him dissipated without a trace. Looking at the group of Wood Peak disciples gathering from all directions, He Gang was dumbfounded, and a faint ominous premonition rose in his heart. Two quasi-Wood Peak disciples who hadn't even officially registered as 5 Elements sect disciples had caused so many Wood Peak disciples to stand up for them. Even if his reaction was slow, he realized that something was amiss. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Figures, both male and female, streaked through the air, arriving in front of Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo in moments. They formed a human wall, shielding them from behind. These people were all disciples of Wood Peak. This is... Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo exchanged glances, both seeing shock in the other's eyes. The actions of these Wood Peak disciples surprised them, but also filled them with warmth. These Wood Peak disciples were protecting them. Now, a group of Wood Peak disciples stood guard behind Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, their faces wary as they stared at Wood Peak elder He Gang, as if He Gang were some monstrous beast. "Elder He, you can't touch them. Elder He, if you want to kill them, you'll have to get past us first." The group of Wood Peak disciples stood united, their faces filled with indignation as they confronted He Gang. What are you doing?" He Gang took a deep breath, his face beneath his bushy beard filled with astonishment. He had never imagined that 2 young men, who had only just arrived at Wood Peak and hadn't even registered as official disciples, would possess such powerful charisma. Who could tell him what in the hell was going on? "What are you doing?" Luo Chun stood beside He Gang, his eyes cold as he swept over the group of Wood Peak disciples, saying in a deep voice, "Don't forget, you are all Wood Peak disciples. Now, my master, a Wood Peak elder, wants to punish these 2 quasi-Wood Peak disciples who wantonly killed. Do you dare to interfere? Do you have a death wish?" As he spoke, a chilling killing intent flickered in Luo Chen's eyes, sweeping towards the group of Wood Peak disciples, seemingly trying to threaten them. Unfortunately, the group of Wood Peak disciples seemed not to have heard Luo Chen's words at all. Their gazes remained fixed on He Gang, filled with vigilance. It was as if they were deeply afraid that He Gang would attack Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo again. For a moment, the atmosphere on the scene became incredibly tense. He Gang stood suspended in the air, making no move. Although he was 100% confident he could kill Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo even with the interference of the Wood Peak disciples, he didn't do so. Right now, his heart was filled with curiosity. How did Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo manage to make a group of Wood Peak disciples go to such lengths for them? As the saying goes, he who wins the hearts of the people wins the world. Duan Ling Tian and Zhang Shouyong, though not yet officially Wood Peak disciples, had completely won the hearts of the people in Wood Peak, making even him, a Wood Peak elder, feel ashamed. Duan Ling Tian Dinyo, are you all right? An urgent voice came from far to near, accompanied by a swift figure flying over, arriving in front of the Wood Peak disciples, forming a human wall in a moment. "We're fine." At this moment, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo stepped out from behind the crowd, standing in front of the newcomer. The newcomer was none other than Shun Wei. At this moment, Shunwei's face was extremely grim. Before he arrived, he had already roughly learned about everything that was happening from the Wood Peak disciple, who had come to find him. He had never expected that shortly after he returned to his residence and sat down to cultivate, such a major incident would occur outside. Someone actually wanted to kill Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo to destroy the future of their Wood Peak. If it had been in the past, after Shinwei appeared, he would definitely have greeted Wood Peak Elder He Gang first, but he didn't now. Instead, he bowed slightly to the group of Wood Peak disciples and said with a serious expression, "Thank you all. You are all excellent. I believe that with you all, the future of our Wood Peak will surely be bright. Senior Brother Shinwei, you're too kind." "That's right, Senior Brother Shinwei. This is what we should do. Senior Brother Shinwei, you and Elder Ku are the true heroes of our Wood Peak. What we did was just a trivial matter." The group of Wood Peak disciples responded one after another. "Thank you." At this moment, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo also bowed to the group of Wood Peak disciples. Perhaps none of the Wood Peak disciples before them were stronger than them, but everything these Wood Peak disciples had just done made them genuinely grateful. Facing Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo's thanks, the group of Wood Peak disciples smiled kindly. Elder He. Shinwei turned and looked at He Gang, who stood in the distance, his face sinking. "I wonder, how did Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo provoke you to make you want to kill them?" Shinwei's tone was filled with a sense of questioning. "Shinwei, what are you? Do you even deserve to speak to my master like that?" Before He Gang could speak, Luo Chun had already sneered disdainfully. Luo. He Gang had already sensed that something was wrong, and now seeing his disciple still so impulsive, he couldn't help but frown, about to stop him. However, just as he opened his mouth, he was interrupted by a cold voice that descended from the sky. "If he doesn't deserve it, do I?" The cold voice echoed down, attracting everyone's attention. High in the sky, two old men descended side by side. However, the faces of these two old men were extremely grim at the moment, especially the one-armed old man who had just spoken. His eyes flashed with extreme coldness, like a coiled venomous snake, ready to strike at any moment. "Yang, Elder Yang, you're back?" Seeing the one-armed old man, He Gang couldn't help but be startled. Never expecting this old man to return to Wood Peak. One must know that 10 years ago, after the old man's direct disciple was poached by the Fire Peak Master, the old man, in a fit of rage, left the Five Elements sect and went to Wood Peak's stronghold in Inding City. He hadn't expected that after 10 years, the old man would actually return again. "Who are you?" Luo Chen clearly didn't recognize the one-armed old man, frowning as he asked in a deep voice. "Luo Chen, don't be rude. This is Elder Yang, the second strongest person in our Wood Peak. Hurry and apologize to Elder Yang." Seeing his disciple dare to offend the old man, cold sweat broke out on He Gang's forehead, and he hastily roared, "The second strongest in Wood Peak?" As soon as He Gang said this, Luo Chen's face completely changed. He is Elder Yangling. At some point, Luo Chen's gaze fell on the one-armed old man's severed arm. Immediately after, his body shivered for no reason, as if he had recalled something terrifying. Although he had only become He Gang's disciple 8 years ago and arrived at this Five Elements sect's Wood Peak 7 years ago, he had heard about this old man from his master more than once. This old man, named Yang Ling, was the strongest existence in Wood Peak, second only to the Peak Master, Elder Yang. "Yang." Luo Chen couldn't help but shiver, hastily lowering his head to bow to Yang Ling. I didn't know your identity just now. Elder Yang, please don't be offended." "Humph." Yang Ling snorted coldly, and without any visible action. A bang sounded. The next moment, Luo Chen flew out like an arrow shot from a bow, spitting several mouthfuls of dark blood along the way. Luo Chen, who barely managed to stop himself in midair, had a face as pale as paper, and looked at Yang Ling with a terrified expression. "Elder Yang, I was wrong. I was truly wrong." He had not reacted at all when the one-armed old man had made his move. He knew that if the one-armed old man had wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have lived another breath. "Elder Yang, why is this?" Seeing that Yang Ling still attacked his disciple after he apologized, He Gang felt a little embarrassed and asked in a deep voice, "Why?" Yang Ling glanced at He Gang indifferently, and the next moment, he disappeared from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was already in the position where He Gang had just been, while He Gang himself was sent flying. Following in Luo Chen's footsteps, Duan Ling Tian, Huang Dinyo. Wood Peak will give you an explanation for today's events. Ku Zheng, who had come with Yang Ling, said to Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo with a serious expression. In the distance, He Gang, his face pale, glared at Yang Ling. Yang Ling, don't think that just because you're the second strongest in Wood Peak, I'm afraid of you. If you don't give me an explanation for today's matter, I will go to the Peak Master to seek justice. Peak Master, hearing He Gang's words, a cold sneer appeared on Yang Ling's lips. If it wasn't me standing here right now, but the Peak Master, do you think you and your disciple would only receive this much punishment? It must be said that Yang Ling's words startled He Gang. Immediately after, He Gang's gaze fell on Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, vaguely realizing that everything before him was related to these two young men. Who exactly were these two young men? Why were a group of Wood Peak disciples willing to protect them? Why were Yang Ling and Ku Zheng standing up for them? At this moment, his heart was filled with nothing but confusion. Xin Wei, as soon as we heard that He Gang wanted to kill Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, we rushed over immediately. What exactly happened with this matter? Just as the atmosphere became a little strange, Ku Zheng looked at Xin Wei and asked in a deep voice. Xin Wei took a deep breath, without any concealment, and recounted everything that happened today when he brought Duan Ling Tian and the other two over, and how they were blocked by Luo Chun and Hong Shi. Luo Chun and Hong Shi not only blocked us, but also repeatedly insulted Duan Ling Tian and Dinyo, calling them good-for-nothings. All of this can be attested to by many fellow disciples, both brothers and sisters. Speaking of this, Xin Wei looked around at the group of Wood Peak disciples scattered around. That's right. I can testify that Luo Chun and Hong Shi did indeed insult Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo like that at the time. I can testify too. If it weren't for their aggressiveness, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo definitely wouldn't have made a move. Even a mud figure has a 3-point temper, let alone Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, who are human. If I were them, I wouldn't be able to stand being humiliated like that either. One after another, the Wood Peak disciples spoke up that a martial artist has an unyielding spirit, standing between heaven and earth, with the might of heaven and earth unable to bend their spine. Better to die standing than live kneeling. If one could remain indifferent after being so humiliated, what was the point of cultivating martial arts? If one couldn't even protect oneself, how could one protect loved ones around them? Hearing the clamoring words of the Wood Peak disciples, He Gang's face completely changed. He Gang never expected that such an important matter would be glossed over by his disciple. If he had known beforehand that Duan Ling Tian and the other person had acted because they had suffered such humiliation, he would never have intervened because he had no moral ground to stand on. Why didn't you tell me clearly? He Gang looked at Luo Chun, his face extremely grim. Luo Chun remained silent. Of course, he couldn't explain the matter clearly, because he knew that once he explained it, with his master's character, he would absolutely not make a move against Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo. However, he never expected that just as Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo were about to be killed by his master, the disciples of Wood Peak would arrive in force to disrupt and stop his master. The victors become kings, the vanquished become bandits. This was the exact sentiment in Luo Chen's heart. However, Luo Chen wasn't worried. Although he had gone a bit too far in this matter, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, the two parties involved, were ultimately unharmed. In his opinion, he wouldn't have to pay with his life. Moreover, the current Wood Peak was in urgent need of talent, a prodigy among the younger generation of Wood Peak. He believed that even Yang Ling and Ku Zheng wouldn't truly do anything to him, that if something happened to him, it would be a loss for the entire Wood Peak. Therefore, he was fearless. After Luo Chun and Hong Shi repeatedly humiliated Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, the two, unable to bear it any longer, simultaneously slapped Luo Chun twice. Immediately after, Hong Shi was severely injured and had his cultivation crippled. Xin Wei continued to describe the scene at the time. At that time, Although Hong Shi's cultivation was crippled, if someone had saved him, he wouldn't have fallen to his death. Hong Shi had once begged Luo Chen for help, but Luo Chen walked away without looking back, not helping him at all. The surrounding Wood Peak disciples all nodded, agreeing with Shun Wei's statement. Crack. A crisp sound of a slap attracted everyone's attention. It was He Gang. In his extreme anger, who had slapped Luo Chen, hitting him so hard that Luo Chen's head snapped to the side, and he spat out a mouthful of broken teeth. Not only that, but half of Luo Chen's face was completely swollen, resembling half a pig's head. Master! Master you! Luo Chen was stunned, completely stunned. This was the first time his master had been so angry in front of him. The first time he had hit him so hard, making it difficult for him to accept at first. Two young fellows. Now that the truth of this matter has come to light, He Gang and his disciple have received their due lesson. How about we end it here? After learning the full story, Yang Ling coldly swept his gaze over He Gang and his disciple Luo Chen, then looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo, asking for their opinion. Impossible. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo shook their heads in unison, speaking at the same time. That elder he was quite arrogant just now, saying that neither Duan Ling Tian nor I were qualified to be Wood Peak disciples. In that case, Duan Ling Tian and I will leave Wood Peak now. Huang Denyo glanced at He Gang indifferently, then chuckled. As soon as Huang Denyo said this, not only did Yang Ling, Kuzheng, and Shun Wei's expressions change, but the faces of the surrounding Wood Peak disciples also completely changed. For a moment, the Wood Peak disciples all glared at He Gang. In their opinion, if it weren't for He Gang's words, why would Huang Denyo have the idea of leaving Wood Peak? Don't worry, two elders. Even if Denyo and I leave Wood Peak, we won't go to any of the other three peaks, Water Peak, Fire Peak, or Earth Peak. We will go to Metal Peak, and I imagine Metal Peak won't refuse us. Duan Ling Tian glanced at Yang Ling and Kuzheng, speaking indifferently. Humph. At this moment, He Gang snorted coldly, disdainfully saying, "Two ignorant youngsters. What happened before was indeed my disciple's fault, but since Elder Yang has already said to end it here, you still dare to push your luck? You merely teamed up to defeat Hong Shi, whose strength is comparable to Luo Chen's. Do you really think your strength is that great? Do you really think you are that important to our Wood Peak?" By the end, He Gang's gaze towards Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo was full of contempt. Hearing He Gang's words, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but burst into laughter, then looked at Yang Ling and Kuzheng, shrugging his shoulders indifferently. Two elders, you've seen it. Since Wood Peak doesn't welcome Denyo and me, then Denyo and I naturally won't shamelessly stay here. Duan Ling Tian, let's go pick up Shaoxian first, and then we'll leave this Wood Peak. I don't want to stay in this cursed place for another moment. Huang Denyo said. All right. Duan Ling Tian responded. Yang Ling and Kuzheng's expressions changed dramatically, and they both glared at He Gang, their gazes as sharp as knives, wishing they could cut He Gang into 1,000 pieces. Now, they finally understood that it turned out that He Gang had no idea of Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo's true strength, thinking that the two of them could only barely defeat Hong Shi, whose strength was comparable to Luo Chen's, by teaming up. Duan Ling Tian, Denyo. Wait. Just then, Shun Wei called out to Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo. Shun Wei, whether I stay at Wood Peak or not, you and I will always be friends. Duan Ling Tian smiled faintly. Me too. Huang Denyo also said. Duan Ling Tian. Denyo, please wait a moment. Just a moment, okay? A hint of pleading was subtly mixed in Shun Wei's tone. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo exchanged glances, and after reaching an agreement, they nodded to Shun Wei, agreeing. Seeing this, Shun Wei breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time, looked at He Gang, who was standing in the distance, and said in a deep voice, Elder He, you said earlier that Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo could only defeat Hong Shi by teaming up? In my opinion, that's simply a huge joke. As soon as Shun Wei said this, He Gang was first startled, then frowned. Is that not true? His disciple Luo Chen had told him this personally. Could it be false? This must have been told to you by Luo Chen, right? It seems Luo Chen truly hates Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo. For his own selfish desires, he completely disregarded the future of Wood Peak. After seeing He Gang's current reaction, Shunwei easily guessed some things and spoke to the point. The future of Wood Peak. Asterisk as soon as Shunwei said this, He Gang's face changed dramatically, and he looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo with an incredulous expression, his heart trembling. Could it be? Could it be that they could cripple Hong Shi in a one-on-one fight? What? That Luo Chun actually didn't tell Elder He that Huang Dinyo crushed Hong Shi in one move and crippled his Dantian in the second move. Huang Dinyo, who comprehends the earth intent, even when attacking in the air and unable to utilize the power of the earth, he can still conjure 130 ancient horned dragon phantoms by drawing upon the power of heaven and earth without using a spirit weapon. Duan Ling Tian is also not bad. At such a young age, his strength has already surpassed that of senior brother Shinwei and that Luo Chun. Elder He's face seems a bit grim. It seems Luo Chen really didn't explain Huang Dinyo and Duan Ling Tian's strength to him clearly. This Luo Chun is truly selfish. For his own self-interest, he doesn't hesitate to ruin the future of our Wood Peak. The Wood Peak disciples discussed animatedly, revealing everything they knew without any reservations. Crack. Another loud slap rang out, as He Gang slapped Luo Chen again, swelling the other side of Luo Chen's face and turning him into a pig's head once more. Within a single day, Luo Chen had turned into a pig's head twice. Beast, you are trying to put your master in an unjust position. The current He Gang seemed to have transformed into an enraged tiger, wishing he could open his bloody maw and swallow Luo Chen. But he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Luo Chen did not beg for mercy, maintaining his silence that he knew that at this moment, silence was the best protective umbrella. Duan Ling Tian, Huang Dinyo. Soon, He Gang took a deep breath, looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, and bowed deeply to them. I apologize for what I said earlier. Regardless, please, you must stay at Wood Peak. Wood Peak can no longer withstand any more storms. Wood Peak needs people like you to create its future. And Wood Peak's disciples also need people like you to stand up for them, to allow them to hold their heads high. He Gang's words were extremely sincere. Ever since he learned of Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo's strength, he seemed to have become a different person. Humph. Duan Ling Tian snorted coldly, ignoring He Gang. Do you think that what you and your disciple did to Duan Ling Tian and me can be resolved with a few apologies? If it were really that simple, then everyone might as well stop cultivating and just cripple their own cultivation. Huang Dinyo sneered. As long as you are willing to stay, I will agree to anything you ask, He Gang said with a sincere expression. Are you sure? Huang Dinyo's sneer grew even more pronounced. Absolutely. He Gang nodded. Good. Since you're so straightforward, I won't dawdle. As long as you agree to my two requests, I can continue to stay at Wood Peak and guarantee that I will not transfer to any of the other 4 peaks. Huang Dinyo slowly said. What about him? He Gang looked at Duan Ling Tian. I can't make decisions for him. Huang Dinyo shook his head. Dinyo, what are you making him agree to? Duan Ling Tian asked with curiosity, using his elemental energy to transmit his voice. Soon, Duan Ling Tian received Huang Dinyo's reply and couldn't help but gasp, responding with a shocked elemental energy transmission. Dinyo, you're truly ruthless. Who told them to provoke me, Brother Nyo? Especially this old fellow, who almost killed me just now. Recalling the scene just now, Huang Dinyo still felt a lingering fear. As long as you agree to Dinyo's 2 requests and act on them, I can stay at Wood Peak with Dinyo, and we will not transfer to any of the other 4 peaks. Duan Ling Tian looked at He Gang and said indifferently. He Gang's eyes immediately lit up upon hearing this, and he then looked at Huang Dinyo, eagerly asking, what are your requests? Please state them. The current He Gang had completely lost his previous high-handed attitude when facing Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo. Asterisk, my first demand. You cripple your cultivation. As soon as Huang Dinyo spoke, it was like a clap of thunder, causing everyone present, except for Duan Ling Tian, to change their expressions. They had never imagined that Huang Dinyo would make such an outrageous demand. Asking a Wood Peak elder to cripple his cultivation? Wasn't that a joke? What? Unwilling. Seeing He Gang's drastically changed expression, Duan Ling Tian sneered. Don't forget, Denyo and I were almost killed by you just now. Now, we're not asking for your life, only your cultivation. We're already being very merciful to you. Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, the surrounding Wood Peak disciples were speechless. This could be called merciful? He Gang, a Wood Peak elder, a void-prying stage 6th level existence. His cultivation was the result of a lifetime of practice and accumulation. Once crippled, it was imaginable that he would wish he were dead. Duan Ling Tian, don't go too far. Luo Chun, who had been silent, finally couldn't help but roar out. Luo Chun, shut your stinking mouth. It's not your turn to speak yet. Do you believe that if you dare to utter another word, Denyo and I will leave Wood Peak immediately? Duan Ling Tian coldly swept a glance at Luo Chun and said in a deep voice, Duan Ling Tian's meaning is my meaning. Huang Denyo chimed in. Naughty disciple, shut up. He Gang's face darkened, and he rebuked. If you dare to say another word, today, I, your master, will personally end you. Luo Chen's face was ugly, but he dared not speak further. He knew his master's temper all too well. He was a man of his word, little fellows. Yang Ling looked at Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo, frowning. Can you change your demand? Elder He, after all, is a pillar of our Wood Peak, you. Elder Yang, Denyo, and I didn't necessarily insist on him crippling his cultivation. Duan Ling Tian unceremoniously interrupted Yang Ling's words and said lightly, That's good. Yang Ling wasn't angry that Duan Ling Tian interrupted him. Instead, he breathed a sigh of relief. But if he doesn't meet our demand, we will leave Wood Peak immediately. Duan Ling Tian finished his unfinished sentence. Immediately. Yang Ling's face changed drastically. He had never expected Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo to be so stubborn, seemingly determined to cripple He Gang's cultivation before giving up. However, after a second thought, he felt relieved. According to Duan Ling Tian's earlier words, they had almost died at He Gang's hands, putting himself in their shoes. Such a demand wasn't excessive. Yang Ling's current thoughts were precisely the thoughts of the surrounding Wood Peak disciples. After being shocked by Huang Denyo's demand, they immediately recalled what had happened earlier and couldn't help but feel relieved. If they were in Huang Denyo's position, they would have made the same decision. Denyo? It seems Elder He still hasn't made up his mind. Let's go. Duan Ling Tian glanced at He Gang, whose expression was constantly changing, shook his head, called out to Huang Denyo, and prepared to leave. Wait. Just as Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo were about to leave, He Gang finally spoke, and he seemed to have aged more than 10 years in an instant. Today's matter, in the final analysis, was caused by my naughty disciple, but I myself am also to blame. Therefore, I apologize to you again. He Gang bowed again to Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo, but the latter only looked at him coldly. Boom. Just then, He Gang moved, striking out like lightning, his palm landing on his dantian. Whoosh. The next moment, a vast, almost liquefied true energy surged out from He Gang's dantian, instantly rushing into the void and disappearing. As for He Gang himself, with a pale face, his body plummeted downwards. Without his cultivation, he no longer had the ability to continue flying. All of this happened in an instant, so fast that most of the people present couldn't react. Sigh. Yang Ling sighed, and with a raise of his hand, an invisible force swept out, supporting the crippled He Gang, preventing him from falling to his death. Take Elder He down to rest. Yang Ling looked at a Wood Peak disciple. Yes, Elder Yang. The designated Wood Peak disciple respectfully responded and left with He Gang. At this moment, everyone, including Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo, came back to their senses, but their faces were filled with shock. They clearly hadn't expected He Gang to actually do that. This He Gang is quite a man of his word. Avoid prying stage 6th level cultivation, crippled just like that, without any hesitation. I have to admit, he is a qualified Wood Peak elder. The hatred in Duan Ling Tian's eyes disappeared, replaced by admiration. Avoid prying stage 6th level martial artist. For the future of Wood Peak, willingly crippled his cultivation. This alone had earned his respect. It's just a pity that his judgment was too poor, taking in a selfish disciple who ruined his own life. Huang Dinyo's eyes flickered, and he said slowly, "Master." Just then, Luo Chun, standing in the distance, cried out in sorrow. Then his figure moved, swiftly chasing in the direction he gang had left, trying to run. As soon as Luo Chun moved, Huang Dinyo, who had been watching him, followed in pursuit. With Huang Dinyo's strength, he caught up to Luo Chun in an instant and blocked him. Seeing Huang Dinyo appear before him, Luo Chen's face darkened. Then he looked at Yang Ling. "Elder Yang, my master is old, and now his cultivation has been crippled. I want to go and take care of him." At this moment, Luo Chun played the emotional card. He knew in his heart that after his master crippled his cultivation and met Huang Dinyo's first demand, Huang Dinyo would definitely make a second demand. He didn't even need to think to guess that the second demand would be related to him. Therefore, he just wanted to leave this troublesome place quickly. Unfortunately, as soon as he made a move, he was stopped by Huang Dinyo. "Umph." Hearing Luo Chen's words, Yang Ling snorted coldly, his wise eyes fixed on Luo Chen, as if he could see through everything. "Don't think I don't know your little schemes. How could a selfish person like you truly care about Elder He? Little fellows, what is your second demand?" Yang Ling glanced at Huang Dinyo, then looked at Duan Ling Tian. "Duan Ling Tian, you say it." Huang Dinyo chuckled and said to Duan Ling Tian at the same time. His eyes were tightly fixed on Luo Chun, like a hunter staring at his prey. "Dinyo and I's second demand is very simple. This Luo Chun, choose one of us to engage in a life and death battle. If he can last for 3 breaths of time, we will let bygones be bygones, and we will stay in Wood Peak. Even if he is killed by the chosen one within 3 breaths of time, we will still stay in Wood Peak and represent Wood Peak in the 5 Peaks battle to win glory for Wood Peak." Duan Ling Tian's words were resounding and impactful. Whoosh. Duan Ling Tian's words were like a stone stirring up 1,000 waves, causing the surrounding Wood Peak disciples to burst into an uproar. 3 breaths of time? Are they underestimating Luo Chen too much? If Luo Chen were to fight Huang Dinyo, he might not last 3 breaths. But now, it's letting Luo Chen choose one of them for a life and death battle. This introduces a lot of variables. If Luo Chen chooses Duan Ling Tian, he should be able to last 3 breaths of time. For a time, most Wood Peak disciples only thought that Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo intended to let Luo Chen off the hook. Only Yang Ling, Ke Zheng, and Shen Wei, who knew Duan Ling Tian's strength, knew the truth. Duan Ling Tian's strength far surpassed Huang Dinyo's. He probably wouldn't even need a single breath of time to kill Luo Chen. "Good. I accept your demand." After hearing Duan Ling Tian's second demand, Luo Chen, whose face had been constantly changing, finally gritted his teeth and agreed. "Elder Yang, please be a witness to the agreement between them and me." Luo Chen looked at Yang Ling, his words indicating that he seemed very afraid that Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo would go back on their word. "You choose any one of them for that life and death battle. As long as you can last for 3 breaths of time, I guarantee your safety." Yang Ling did not refuse and agreed out of course. He knew his words were superfluous. Because Luo Chen couldn't possibly last 3 breaths of time in the hands of Duan Ling Tian or Huang Dinyo, the wind blew gently, carrying a hint of coolness. High in the sky, a group of observing Wood Peak disciples stared intently at Luo Chen. Although they were mentally prepared and guessed that Luo Chen would definitely choose Duan Ling Tian, they were still a little expectant when Luo Chen was about to make his choice. Duan Ling Tian. Just as most Wood Peak disciples expected, Luo Chen's gaze locked onto Duan Ling Tian, treating Duan Ling Tian as a soft persimmon. Seeing Luo Chen choose Duan Ling Tian, Huang Dinyo's face revealed a triumphant smile. This Luo Chen actually dares to challenge Duan Ling Tian. He's truly seeking death. At this moment, Huang Dinyo seemed to have completely forgotten that even if Luo Chen hadn't chosen Duan Ling Tian but him, he would still be unable to escape death. A moment later, in the encirclement of a group of Wood Peak disciples, the two stood in confrontation. Duan Ling Tian, Luo Chen. Luo Chen stood in midair and immediately took out his spirit weapon, a 3rd-grade spirit sword with flowing light, seemingly seeking a sense of security from it. Now, as he gazed at Duan Ling Tian, his breathing became rapid. and cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. He was very anxious. In contrast, Duan Ling Tian stood there quietly, unmoving like a mountain. From beginning to end, he didn't even look Luo Chun in the eye. His gaze was distant, not at all like he was engaging in a life-and-death battle, but more like he was lost in thought. Humiliation. Blatant humiliation. Duan Ling Tian's attitude made Luo Chen's anger surge, and he tightened his grip on the third-grade spirit sword in his hand, ready to strike at any moment. Today, would peak disciples Duan Ling Tian and Luo Chun will engage in a life-and-death battle. If either one dies, the sect will not hold the survivor responsible. All would peak disciples present are witnesses. Yang Ling's voice boomed like a bell, spreading out. Begin. As Yang Ling's words fell, Luo Chun moved, choosing to strike first. Whoosh. Luo Chun moved like a swimming dragon, shooting towards Duan Ling Tian. The tier 3 spirit sword in his hand tore through the air, emitting a series of ear-piercing sword cries. Swimming dragon sword art. When Luo Chun drew his sword, the sword in his hand seemed to perfectly coordinate with his body. If his body was like a dragon's, then the sword in his hand was the dragon's claw. The sharp dragon claw ripped through the air, mercilessly striking towards Duan Ling Tian, facing Luo Chen's fierce sword attack. Duan Ling Tian lazily stretched his body, then yawned languidly. Seeing this, the surrounding group of Wood Peak disciples were speechless. Luo Chun, though perhaps not as strong as Duan Ling Tian, was not far behind in their opinion. Duan Ling Tian was being overly arrogant and might suffer for it. After all, Duan Ling Tian hadn't even taken out his spirit weapon yet. Whoosh. Just as Luo Chun, person and sword, swept towards Duan Ling Tian, above the void, 140 ancient horned dragon phantoms galloped out, their momentum like a rainbow, bearing their fangs and claws as they pounced on Duan Ling Tian. Thousand illusions. Seeing Luo Chun, person and sword, just inches away, Duan Ling Tian, whose mental energy had long been building up, plunged his soul imprint deep into his soul and directly unleashed his soul skill. A fantasy space appeared, covering an area of several tens of meters around Duan Ling Tian. This moment, Luo Chun was precisely within the range of the illusion space. Wind sweeps fallen leaves. Facing Luo Chen's fierce sword, Duan Ling Tian flashed out, stepping to one side. Immediately after, the group of Wood Peak disciples watching were all stunned, their eyes wide. Some even gaped in shock, unable to close their mouths for a long time. All of this was because they witnessed a scene they would never forget. They clearly saw that, even as their naked eyes could clearly catch Duan Ling Tian dodging to the side. Luo Chun, who was supposedly far stronger than them, seemed to not notice at all. He, person and sword, continued to thrust towards the spot where Duan Ling Tian had been moments before. His sharp gaze remained fixed on the empty air in front of him, as if Duan Ling Tian were still there. What is Luo Chun doing? Is he blind? Didn't he see Duan Ling Tian dodge to the side? If he doesn't stop, he'll completely expose his back to Duan Ling Tian. The scene before them left the group of Wood Peak disciples dumbfounded, unable to understand why Luo Chun would make such an obvious mistake. Only a few who knew Duan Ling Tian's true capabilities understood why Luo Chun was acting this way. Luo Chun had not made a mistake. In fact, in that world, in Luo Chen's eyes, Duan Ling Tian had never dodged from beginning to end, which was why he continued to thrust his sword forward without hesitation. Whoosh. Duan Ling Tian, who had dodged to the side, raised his hand, and his elemental energy surged, then transformed into gusts of fierce, strong winds, coiling around his palm and continuously gathering together above the void above his head. A heaven and earth phenomenon gradually took shape. First, 70 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared, followed by another 40 ancient horned dragon phantoms. A total of 110 ancient horned dragon phantoms, spiraling down as if proclaiming Duan Ling Tian's current strength. 5th level of the void prying stage. 3rd level intermediate wind concept. It's over. Luo Chun is finished. Seeing that Luo Chun still hadn't noticed Duan Ling Tian, and his relentless momentum remained unchanged, With both person and sword thrusting towards where Duan Ling Tian had been, many would-peak disciples sighed. Whoosh. Luo Chun, person and sword, charged past Duan Ling Tian, his back completely exposed to Duan Ling Tian's eyes. Duan Ling Tian had already raised his accumulated palm strike, which suddenly moved through the air, accompanied by a series of muffled air explosions, and landed heavily on Luo Chen's back. Bang. With a loud bang, Luo Chun was sent flying by Duan Ling Tian's palm strike. After spitting out several mouthfuls of congested blood, he barely managed to stabilize himself. Who? Luo Chun turned back in a panic, and with just one glance, he saw Duan Ling Tian standing there, his face changing drastically. How are you there? Didn't you already die? Looking at Duan Ling Tian in front of him, Luo Chun looked as if he had seen a ghost. Just now, the sword in his hand had clearly pierced Duan Ling Tian's chest, killing Duan Ling Tian. But just as he was excitedly celebrating his success, he felt a vast power come from behind him, landing on his body and severely injuring him, sending him flying. Initially, he thought it was Huangdan Yo, seeing Duan Ling Tian killed and unwilling to accept it, who had ambushed him. But when he turned around, he was horrified to discover something extremely terrifying. The Duan Ling Tian, who should have been killed by him, was actually standing in front of him, completely unharmed, which made it difficult for him to accept. I'm dead. Facing the flustered Luo Chun, Duan Ling Tian sneered. Do you think you could kill me? Just now, he used the soul skill Thousand Illusions to confuse Luo Chun, making Luo Chun kill the fictional him within the illusion space. He wanted Luo Chun to actively come to him. Everything that followed was within his control. After he severely injured Luo Chun, he withdrew the soul skill Thousand Illusions, revealing his true self to Luo Chun. Luo Chun, seeing him alive, naturally looked as if he had seen a ghost. After all, within that illusion space, Luo Chun had already killed the fictional him, and Luo Chun had no idea of the illusion space's existence. Impossible. How is this possible? How could such a thing happen? Impossible, impossible. Luo Chen's eyes were blank, and he kept shaking his head, somewhat hysterically. One more breath. Just then, Yang Ling's voice came. The surrounding group of would-peak disciples' eyes lit up, and they stared intently at Duan Ling Tian and Luo Chun, all wanting to know if Luo Chun could last another breath. If he could, he would live. If not, he would die here. Escape. Yang Ling's voice, entering Luo Chen's ears, was like a death knell, making him dare not to be distracted by anything else, leaving only the thought of getting away from Duan Ling Tian. As long as he could endure this last breath, he would live. As for anything else, he didn't bother to think, nor did he dare to this moment. He had only one thought in his mind: to survive. But could he survive? Just as Luo Chen moved, preparing to flee, and he had already made his move. Whoosh. A swift purple figure, like a ghost, appeared beside him like a shadow, scaring him almost out of his wits. No. Looking at Duan Ling Tian, who was now within arm's reach, Luo Chen's face changed drastically. As he roared, he shook the Tier 3 spirit sword in his hand and thrust it towards Duan Ling Tian. Whoosh. A faint sword cry had just sounded, but in an instant, it abruptly ceased, a fleeting moment. The next moment, everyone watching clearly saw that a faint sword mark suddenly appeared on Luo Chen's throat. Moments later, the sword mark bloomed open, and gushes of dazzling fresh blood poured out as if without end, staining Luo Chen's entire body. Immediately after, Luo Chen's eyes lost their focus, and the hand holding the sword, which was thrusting towards Duan Ling Tian, stopped midway, its speed slowing as it continued to sweep forward. Also sweeping forward was Luo Chen's lifeless corpse, which had lost its breath in a blink of an eye. Luo Chen's corpse fell, and in a moment, it smashed onto the cliff face on the side of Wood Peak, turning into a bloody mess. Silence. The scene was dead silent. The group of Wood Peak disciples withdrew their gazes, instinctively focusing on the purple-clothed youth not far away. Their eyes filled with horror. At some point, in the purple-clothed youth's hand, there was an additional 3-foot green sword. That fleeting sword cry just now was the sound made when the 3-foot green sword in his hand swept out. Sword drawing art. This was the sword-skilled Duan Ling Tian used to seal Luo Chen's throat after appearing beside him like a shadow. The sword skill was not advanced, but it placed extreme emphasis on speed, with Duan Ling Tian's current strength. Activating the sword-drawing art made his speed reach an astonishing level at least. Among those present, only Yang Ling and Kuzheng saw it clearly. Even Huang Dinyo, who was also a 5th-level void-prying stage martial artist, like Duan Ling Tian, couldn't catch that fleeting sword light. Whoosh. Duan Ling Tian raised his hand, and the Tier 3 spirit sword in his hand was put back into his spatial ring at the same time. The nearly 160 ancient horned dragon phantoms above the void dissipated, vanishing without a trace in a blink of an eye. Duan Ling Tian's sword just now was so fast. Yeah, from beginning to end, we only heard that fleeting sword cry. By the time we reacted, Luo Chun was already dead. However, this is also because Luo Chun was already injured. Otherwise, he might not have been caught by Duan Ling Tian. Speaking of Luo Chen's injuries, I still don't quite understand. After Duan Ling Tian dodged, why did he keep charging forward and expose his back to Duan Ling Tian? The strangest thing is, after he was severely injured by Duan Ling Tian, when he turned to look at Duan Ling Tian, he actually said Duan Ling Tian was already dead. He probably got so caught up in his desire to win that he started hallucinating. That way, everything makes sense. Because of the hallucination, he exposed his back to Duan Ling Tian. The group of Wood Peak disciples discussed animatedly, their conversations revolving around the scene of Duan Ling Tian and Luo Chen's battle just now. Huh? Duan Ling Tian, amazing. When Duan Ling Tian returned after sheathing his sword, Huang Dinyo laughed heartily, giving him a thumbs up. That Luo Chun was also foolish. To actually dare choose a monster like you. If he didn't choose me, would he choose you? Duan Ling Tian rolled his eyes at Huang Dinyo. With you, that guy would probably be taken out in one move. I at least let him live for 2 breaths. Not far away, Yang Ling and Ku Zheng exchanged glances and sighed. Their sighs, of course, were not for Luo Chen's death, but for He Gang's act of crippling his own cultivation. He Gang, a Wood Peak elder, a 6th-level void transformation stage existence. For such an existence to cripple his own cultivation was a huge loss for Wood Peak. Regardless. Today's events finally came to a close. However, the news of Wood Peak elder He Gang crippling his cultivation spread rapidly throughout Wood Peak and even reached the other 4 peaks of the 5-element sect in an instant. People from all peaks of the 5-element sect almost knew about 2 newly arrived disciples at Wood Peak who forced He Gang to cripple his cultivation. Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo became thoroughly famous. Earth Peak. Although Earth Peak was the shortest among the 5-element sect's 5 peaks, it was only relative to the other 4 peaks of the 5-element sect. Compared to other mountains, Earth Peak still stood out. The summit of Earth Peak soared into the clouds. From a distance, it was impossible to discern what lay atop it. On the mountainside, to one side of the peak, there was a vast platform, and upon it stood a sprawling palace. This was the deliberation hall of Earth Peak. Normally, the high-ranking officials of Earth Peak would gather here for discussions. Peak Master, a travel-worn old man, stood in the deliberation hall, bowing respectfully to the stout middle-aged man at the head of the table. The middle-aged stout man, dressed in an earthy yellow robe, was portly and short, only about 1.5 meters tall. Elder Tang, why have you returned? The short, stout middle-aged man was none other than Earth Peak Master Tiangu. His small eyes, already mostly obscured by his fleshy face, narrowed into a slit, giving him a harmless appearance. The old man was Tang Lin, the person in charge of the Earth Peak outpost in Inding City, who had rushed back from there. Peak Master, I have important matters to report, Tang Lin said respectfully. Is it about Wood Peak's Yang Ling returning from Inding City? And about Wood Peak recruiting 2 young powerhouses? Tiangu asked indifferently. Peak Master, you already know. Tang Lin was surprised, then asked in confusion. However, Peak Master, you mentioned 2 young powerhouses? As far as I know, the people from Wood Peak only recruited 1 presentable young powerhouse. Your information is outdated. Tiangu shook his head. Half an hour ago, I just received news. The two new young powerhouses at Wood Peak caused a huge commotion as soon as they arrived. Hmm. Tang Lin's eyes flickered, somewhat curious. As soon as they arrived at Wood Peak, they killed a quasi-Wood Peak disciple whose strength was comparable to Shun Wei and Luo Chun. That quasi-Wood Peak disciple was brought back by Wood Peak's He Gang, Tian Gu said. Tang Lin was immediately startled upon hearing this. Although he knew that Wood Peak had recruited a young powerhouse who could easily defeat Shin Wei, he never expected the other party to be so bold, causing such a huge commotion as soon as they arrived at Wood Peak. Moreover, the person killed was brought back by Wood Peak's He Gang, an elder of Wood Peak, was at the Void Transformation Stage Level 6, just like him, and his status in Wood Peak was no lower than Tang Lin's in Earth Peak. He Gang shouldn't let this go, right? Tang Lin's eyes flashed as he asked. He had personally experienced He Gang's fiery temper in the past. He Gang? Tian Gu sneered. He certainly won't let it go, but the outcome will probably surprise you. Yang Ling and Kuzheng intervened. Hearing Tian Gu's words, Tang Lin vaguely realized that the two young powerhouses Yang Ling and Kuzheng brought back to Wood Peak had probably not been harmed by He Gang. Not only did they intervene, just as He Gang was about to kill those two young powerhouses, all the Wood Peak disciples present stepped forward, surrounding and protecting the two, not allowing He Gang to lay a finger on them. At this point, Tian Gu sighed. Although Wood Peak has declined, the unity of its disciples is far beyond what our Earth Peak disciples can compare to. When Tian Gu first heard this news, his initial thought was not about how extraordinary those two young powerhouses were, but rather he was shocked by the unified solidarity of the Wood Peak disciples. With collective effort, what can't be achieved? Hiss! Tang Lin gasped. I never imagined that the two people Yang Ling and Kuzheng brought back would have such strong charisma. It seems the Wood Peak disciples see them as the hope of Wood Peak. As he muttered to himself, a cold glint flashed in Tang Lin's eyes. As a member of Earth Peak, he naturally did not wish for Wood Peak to rise again. Once Wood Peak rose, it would mean that their Earth Peak would very likely become the bottom-ranked peak again. 20 years ago, when Wood Peak was at its peak, their Earth Peak was at the bottom. With their strength, they indeed deserve to be seen as the future hope of Wood Peak. However, after He Gang's commotion, they have developed the intention to leave Wood Peak. Tian Gu continued. Tang Lin was first stunned, then his eyes lit up. Peak Master, our Earth Peak can try to win them over. I didn't expect He Gang to actually help us. Let me finish. Interrupted by Tang Lin, Tian Gu was somewhat displeased. After Tang Lin awkwardly fell silent, he continued. At the critical moment, Yang Ling and Kuzheng appeared. Following that, Tian Gu informed Tang Lin of all the news he had heard earlier. This included the forced self-crippling of Wood Peak elder He Gang's cultivation, as well as the death of He Gang's direct disciple, Luo Chun. What? He Gang actually agreed to their demands and crippled his own cultivation. Tang Lin's pupils contracted, his heart filled with shock. He Gang. A void transformation stage level 6 existence. Crippled the cultivation he had achieved over half his life for the absurd demands of two young lads that in his opinion, He Gang's actions were utterly foolish. Yet, he couldn't help but admire He Gang's courage. For the unknown future of Wood Peak, to take responsibility for his mistakes, he decisively crippled his own cultivation. He Gang, admirable. That He Gang, I hadn't paid much attention to him before, but I never expected him to go to such lengths when faced with a major issue. Even Tian Gu, the Earth Peak Master, couldn't help but show a hint of admiration when mentioning He Gang now. After He Gang's commotion, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo will certainly not leave Wood Peak to join our Earth Peak. What a pity. Tang Lin knew clearly that Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo, having made promises in front of two Wood Peak elders and a group of Wood Peak disciples, could no longer switch to any of the other four peaks of the five-element sect. Not to mention whether Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo themselves would be willing. Even if they were, Wood Peak would not let it go. At that time, even the Wood Peak Master would probably intervene. Wood Peak, though in decline, was only in decline among the younger generation. The older generation powerhouses of Wood Peak were second only to the five-element sect's first peak, Gold Peak. Among the five peaks of the five-element sect, the Wood Peak Master, over 20 years ago, was the second strongest in the sect, second only to their five-element sect's sect master. Although he was injured later, after so many years, even the most severe injuries should have healed that eye in recent years. The reason why their Earth Peak, Water Peak, and Fire Peak dared to poach Wood Peak's talents multiple times was also because the Wood Peak Master disdained to lower himself and intervene in such minor matters. But this time, it was no small matter. It concerned the cultivation of a void transformation stage level 6 elder of Wood Peak. Once Duan Ling Tian and Huang Denyo went back on their word, the Wood Peak Master would likely be the first to kill them. Tang Lin had no doubt about this. I came back this time mainly to inform you, Peak Master, about Wood Peak recruiting a young powerhouse. But I didn't expect Wood Peak to not only recruit one young powerhouse this time, but also cause such a huge incident. Tang Lin sighed. It seems I made this trip for nothing. Not entirely for nothing. Since you're back this time, stay and guide those youngsters a bit more. In a few days, it will be the Five Peaks battle. Tian Gu's eyes flashed, a cold glint passing through them. Wood Peak's rise is inevitable. But I believe none of us from Earth Peak would want Earth Peak to finish last in this Five Peaks battle. Moreover, the ranking of the Five Peaks this time concerns the quotas for entering that place. For our Earth Peak, it holds extraordinary significance. Towards the end, Tian Gu's eyes flickered with a hint of fervent desire. Tang Lin nodded heavily. He naturally knew the significance of that place to the five-element sect and to Earth Peak, Fire Peak. On a platform halfway up the mountain point, 3 Fire Peak disciples were gathered, chatting and laughing. Have you heard about what happened at Wood Peak? Suddenly, one Fire Peak disciple's expression turned serious as he asked the other two. I heard. I never expected Wood Peak to find 2 such outstanding young powerhouses this time. To keep those 2 young powerhouses, Wood Peak Elder He Gang, a void transformation stage level 6 existence, even crippled his own cultivation. Wood Peak's determination this time is immense. It is said that those 2 young powerhouses were brought back by Wood Peak's Elder Yongling and Elder Kuzhong. Elder Yongling, the former master of Hu Fei, the second strongest in Wood Peak. That's right, it's him. It's said that 10 years ago, after Hu Fei was poached by the Peak Master to our Fire Peak, Elder Yongling, in a fit of rage, severed one of his own arms and then left the sect. I didn't expect him to return this time. No way. Even if Hu Fei betrayed him, he didn't need to mutilate himself, did he? You wouldn't know this. It's said that when Elder Yongling encountered Hu Fei back then, Hu Fei was an orphan, chased by wolves, and fell down a 10,000-foot cliff. It was Elder Yongling, who happened to be passing by, who saved him and brought him back to Wood Peak of the Five-Element sect, cultivating him to become talented. I've heard that too. The arm Elder Yongling severed was apparently the very arm that grabbed Hu Fei and saved him back then. His actions clearly showed his regret for saving a white-eyed wolf back then. The 3 Fire Peak disciples discussed animatedly, their words filled with disdain for Hu Fei. You 3. Don't you know that discussing others behind their backs is very impolite? At some unknown moment, a clear, cold voice drifted over. Immediately after, a young man, entirely enveloped in a fiery red robe, appeared before the 3 Fire Peak disciples.